Hi everyone, so we're going to go over this Three.js example here. So it's nothing too fancy here, I just want it really basic, but you can see here we got this little object here and it's rotating and it has this type of pattern or design on it. And then we got this little blob here that's automatically rotating. And then we also got an iPhone that we can rotate. And we're going to be using Three.js for this. And we do have to download a few files from online later on in order to get these, well, especially this iPhone here, we can get these free templates from online, which I could show you how to get it later. So let's make a brand new project. I'm going to go to my desktop and then I'll do npx create next app. I'll say Next.js 3.js, like that, enter. And for all these options here, I'm going to say no. So TypeScript, no. ESLint, no. Tailwind, no. SRC, no. And then here I'll move it left, say no. Import alias, no. And now what we could do is once it's done downloading, we could drag and drop this folder into Visual Studio Code. And this is where we're going to start creating our project. I'm just going to go into readme.md. I'm going to remove all the content here in the readme.md so I could write my own notes here. So we're going to be dealing with Three.js, and then we're going to have some installations we need to install. So we're installing some packages. So what I'm going to be doing is, for this application, I'm going to be using React 3 Fiber. So right here, if we search for 3 Fiber, it should be this first one. Here we go. So we got React 3 Fiber, and this is what we'll be using for our application. So components, scenes. So you can see here we're going to create something like these little boxes, and we're going to have to follow this way of setting up the canvas with the boxes. So we have to follow this documentation in order to properly set it up. And if I go here, let's see, installation, it'll also have here the command that we have to run in order to install React 3 Fiber. And you can see here we can use it on Next.js. So we're going to be installing it. We'll just grab that line of code, which is also right here. It's also right here in the README file. I'm going to copy it, open up a brand new terminal, and I'm going to paste it in. So React 3 Fiber is just going to help us when we want to create the canvas and those 3D models. And what we're going to do now is we do have this Drei as well we need to install. So what Drei will do is it's going to allow us to drag and move around the object so we can rotate it. So I'm going to go to documentation online. So right over here we could see this Drei is useful helper for React 3 Fiber. If I click on it, and I'll just scroll down here, we could see right here that we have to use this installation right here in order to install Drei. So this one essentially is just going to help allow us to interact with the object. So let's copy this. It's written here as well in the installation. When I copy it, I'll paste it in the terminal, enter. Alright, so again, Drei, it's used to rotate the object and interact with it. Okay. And I'll just put the link to the documentation as well right there to read more about it. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to now modify a few of the pages right here. So we're going to go to styles, globals.css first. Let's just deal with that. And what I'll do is I'll delete everything here, and I'll just have the body for now with a margin of 0. That's in the globals.css. And then I'm going to go to home modules.css, and I'm just going to delete everything except for the main. So I'll just delete everything underneath the main. And I'm going to just modify a few things here, or else do dot scene width of 100, view width. And also I'm going to have a canvas, which I'll set up later. And I'll have a height of 500 for now, and background color of red. So we have these styles now set up. That's all I'll really need, because we're not going to do anything too fancy with this application. And what I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to have to go into my index.js, in my pages, index.js. And right here, I'm going to have to delete a few things. So I'll delete the inter, and then I'm going to, right here below the main, I'll just delete the contents inside the main for right now. And that should be okay. And what I'll do here is I'll just delete this inter right here as well, or else we'll get an error because we deleted the inter from above. So delete that, save it. And what I'm going to do now is now I can actually start working with that Three.js and start creating the animations. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to create components in order to organize all of this stuff that I'm going to put on the screen. So I'm going to make a new folder at the root of the project here, new folder, and I'll just call it components. And I'll just start with the box. So new file. So in components, I'll make a new folder and I'll just call it box. I'll make a few more components just so it's not all in one line, it's easier to see. I'll call the other one animated sphere. And later on, I will also create the animation for the iPhone as well. So I'll just create those 3 folders inside of the components folder. And inside box, what I'll do is I will just have a index.js. So in this box index.js, this is where I'm going to create the animation for the box, because this is the example, this is the box that I'm referring to. So I want to be able to create this 3D box, but also be able to rotate it. So right over here, we're going to set up the default template. So when we set up this component here, because we are using Three.js, we are actually going to have to change a few things here. So let's go back to the documentation online. So when we look at the documentation online here, if we click on, let's click on your first screen. So you could see here that for your first screen, we actually have to set up a canvas. And if we scroll down a little bit more, inside a canvas, there is a mesh. So there's a certain way that we need to set it up in order for this to render properly. So we cannot just copy and paste the code. And we could see here, later on it'll tell us how to add more things. But let's take it one step at a time. I need to add a canvas first. So what I'm going to do actually is the canvas, I'm going to put the canvas in the index.js, because this is where we're going to import all of the components anyways. So we just need one canvas right here. So at the top here, we can import canvas. We're going to use this canvas now right here in the main. So we're going to call canvas. like that. So we have opening and closing tag. And for this canvas, what we'll do is we will have a class name. So class name is equal to styles.canvas. Because what we're going to do is here in our styles, our home modules, we set up a canvas right here. So it's just going to be a background color of red, so it'll take up a height of 500. And if I go back to index here, in our canvas, this is where we're going to be importing the box that we've set up here. And there is a few other things that we need to set up as well, but what I'll do first is I will import the box at the top, import box for the component that we set up here on the home page. And then what I'll do is I will, in the canvas, add the box self-closing tag. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually set up the box. But in order to set up the box, let's take a look at this. So we need to add a mesh component. So you could see something with lowercase mesh, and it's the direct equivalent to Three.mesh. So it is required that we use this in order to actually create the object. And it says we do not need to import anything. And mesh is a basic scene object to hold geometry. So geometry is going to become really important. We'll see this. And so there's box geometry and mesh standard material. So this is something that box geometry will help with the size, and then the mesh standard material will be like that material that is on this box, which is like a brick type texture. And in order to add those types of textures and everything, so let's go to our box index.js and let's just set up our mesh first. And based on the mesh that we have here, we don't have to add the canvas because remember this component is being added in the index.js, and this box will then be surrounded by the canvas, so we don't need to worry about it. But I'll go back to my index.js for the box, and I'm going to have to import use loader. So it's going to help load some texture on the box that I want to create. And also I want to import texture loader from Three. And in order to add some sort of box, so there's another site that we need to look at. It's actually going to help us creating these 3D objects. So let's look at, so right over here as well, so Three.js. If I go to the site Three.js and I go to, so here, box geometry. So these geometries are the different types of objects you can import. So we can get a box, a capsule, a circle geometry. So we can create these 3D objects on the screen, but we do have to modify this code a little bit. We're just going to stick with the basic box geometry right now. So we want to create this type of box, and later on we'll add like that, texture and everything. So right over here, the code's not going to look the same because this is slightly different. This is made slightly different, but we can use the same property value of box geometry in our application. So if I go back to my code, lowercase b, I'll type box geometry. You can see it shows up here as well. And I will make it a self-closing tag right here. And what I'm going to attach right here, I'm going to attach, in the box geometry, I'm going to attach geometry. so it knows it's going to be some sort of object. And I'm going to pass some sort of an argument. So this argument, you could see here when it shows up, width, height, and so on. So it's asking, when you set up this argument, you can set up the width, the height, depth, and so on. So let's make this equal to, let's make it curly brace, and then square brackets inside. And then we're going to do a size of 3 height, 3 width, and 3 depth. So this is going to be the size of our box. I'm going to save it. So you're going to see some issues with this when we start looking at it, but let's save it. I just want to see if anything shows up. So let me first run this application right here so I know it works. So npm run dev. Because we already imported the box at the top, this should be working, but there's still a lot of issues with it. Okay, let's go port 3001. Alright, so you can see that we have the object there, but there's nothing actually working right now, and there is some issues with it as well. What we're going to actually have to do is let's actually first add some sort of color texture to this box before we start interacting with it. So in order to do this, we have to actually download a texture. So in order to get a texture, we're actually going to go to our public, and then inside public, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to make it images. And then inside images, this is where I need to save some sort of image in here. I'm just going to Google like rock image or something like that. So I'm going to go into my public and then images. And because I already found one ahead of time, I'm just going to drag and drop it. You can find any texture you want. Just make sure it is a JPEG image, so then you're able to follow along exactly if you want to. So I'm going to paste it in. And I'll just show you what the image looks like. I basically just downloaded this rock type texture, and I'm going to apply this to my box so it has this rugged type of texture to it. And in order to apply the texture, if I go back to the components box index.js, I have to add a mesh standard material. And on the Three.js website, if I look for mesh standard material, here we go. So materials, mesh standard material, I'm going to be applying some sort of material on top of a object. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to apply some sort of material on top of the object that we have. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to, inside my index.js, I'll apply the mesh standard material self-closing tag, and I'm going to create some sort of variable here, const color map, and I'll say use loader. So this is going to help load the image. I'm going to use the texture loader so it helps with adding this texture, and I'm going to be using the image in our images folder. So because the public folder is already accessible, we don't need to directly tell the person where to go to. So we could just put image / rock .jpg. JPG. There we go. So rock.jpg. So it knows where to go to get the texture. And what I'll do is here in the mesh standard material, I will just use map is equal to color map. So it's going to then map that object, this box geometry object, with this type of design or pattern, and it's going to get help with the use loader and texture loader to help add on this image that wraps around the object. So let's save this. So could not load image / rock.jpg. So let me just try restarting this because I added the images after I started this server. So I'm going to end this, and then I'm just going to npm run dev again so I could see maybe this will help. If I go back now, let me try to refresh this page. Okay, unhandled runtime error. So let's see here, cannot load images. So right here it should be images, not image for the pathway. I just misspelt it. Save it. Let's go back to our browser. Refresh. Okay, perfect. So it does technically have the pattern on it, but there's a problem. So the problem is when you're dealing with 3D objects, now we have to add light to the object, right? Because it's just like real world problems. If it is dark outside, we cannot see anything. So we need to add some sort of light or spotlight in order to have some sort of light that will bounce off the object in order for us to see the object properly. So we need to go into our index.js in our pages. We're going to go to pages, index.js, and we need to apply some controls and stuff here. So in our canvas, inside of the canvas, but above the box, this is where we define what we want to do with the box. So let's first start with the easy stuff like ambient light. So before I type it out, I'm going to go to the documentation here for Three.js, and I'll go to ambient light. So let's see here, lights, ambient light. So this light globally illuminates all objects in the scenes equally. So we need this in order to see the actual object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and I'm going to type in ambient light, and it's a self-closing tag, and I will put enable zoom, or I'll put intensity. Intensity is equal to 0.5, so I don't want it a bright light. Maybe I'll just put it like medium intensity, which is 0.5. So I'll save it, and we should be able to see our object now. So I'll refresh. Okay, so it looks like we also need to add a directional light as well, because it's not working just yet. So let's go here under ambient light. I'm also going to put directional light tag. So I'm going to have to add the directional light self-closing tag. I'm going to put a position to it so I can tell the light where it should be shining exactly, is equal to, inside the curly brace I'll put square brackets, -2, 5, 2, so this is kind of like the position of where you want the light to be. And for the intensity, I'll just put it to 1 for right now, so I could see it fully. Directional light is just which direction, where's the light located. Ambient light is just how intense you want it to be when it's shining on the object. So I'm just going to save that. Let's see. Okay, you can see, if you look closely, you will be able to see it slowly now starting to be applied to our object. So we're going to add two more things here. Is right above the ambient light, I'll also put orbit controls, and it's going to help us move the object a little bit as well. So I will enable zoom. I'll try putting this to true. And then what I'll do is I will put a suspense tag right here, and I'll wrap this around the box so it could help interact with the box. And the suspense fallback, that'll be equal to null. So this should work now. Let's take a look here. I'm going to refresh the page here. We could see our object, and now I can grab the object, and whenever I grab it, you can see the box moves as well, right? And as I'm moving it, you can see like when the light will be shining more intensely in certain areas or not. And I'm going to try zooming so I could, use the scroll on my mouse and I can zoom in or out of the object. And if I want to turn that zoom off, I could just change that true to a false, right? So orbit control, I can turn it off. And when I go back here, you can see that we have, when I zoom in or out, it does not work anymore. So it is stuck now. I can only rotate it. So now we have this one rotating object which works right now. Now what we'll be doing is we're going to do this animated sphere right here in the middle. And we're going to have to go to our code here. We're going to have to go to our code here in animated sphere components and then index.js. I'm going to set up the default template here again. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to use the sphere tag. So if I go here and I check for sphere, right here we could set up the sphere with the center and radius. So center of sphere. So we got different property values here. The default is 0, 0, 0 with nothing pretty much. And if we scroll down, so the main thing here is that we have a sphere and we could set up the size of the sphere. So in order to do this, let's go back to our code, and right over here we're going to set up the sphere tag and like that. And I'm going to make sure it is visible, and I'll put arguments, args is equal to, and this is where I'm going to put the size of the sphere. So I'll put 1, 100, 200, and I'll put a scale so we could zoom into it, scale of 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some sort of material, but not the type of material we did before in the box. We're just going to add some sort of color material on top of this sphere. So what I could do is I could use this mesh distort. So let's go here, mesh distort. Let's see here. I'm just gonna. Okay, so it looks like this one does not have it, but we could add this thing called mesh distort right here. Mesh distort. This one looks like it's coming from Drei, so that's why it didn't show up on Three.js. So we're using the mesh distort material that's coming from Drei, and then we are going to add a color of hashtag 8352 FD, and we will attach this as a material, and distort, let's put 0.4, speed, so how fast is it rotating on its own? Let's put 1.5. 1.5. And then roughness. For roughness, I'll just leave it as 1. There's not that much extra texture to it, so we're just going to leave it as 1. That shouldn't really affect what we're doing anyways. So I'm just going to save it, and I'm going to go back to the browser, and I'll just refresh the page here. And of course I forgot we have to import it. So we're going to go back to our code. We need to import this onto our page because we have not imported it. And what I could see here is it did some kind of weird import at the top. This should actually be comma sphere here at the top because we have to import the sphere, which is coming from Drei, and this tag should be sphere. So make sure we have sphere imported at the top from Drei, and then also sphere tag around everything. And then we're going to save it. We're going to go back to our index.js in our pages, and we have to import this sphere onto our page now. So what I'll do is I'll just put it under import box. I'll put import sphere. And this is actually coming from our components. So let me see here. Okay, so I'll just import it as, it's called animated sphere. Import animated sphere. There we go, from our components. And what I'll do here now is I will go down here. I can copy this canvas with all the contents, paste it underneath so I have a copy. And what I'll do is I will just only have to change this part, which is animated sphere now. So we have that component being added to its own canvas. And you can change these other controls if you want around later. I'm just going to save it and see if it works. So you can see here we got our circular sphere. So I'm just going to see why it's making this random spaces. So this canvas here, we're just going to add the px, 500px. Let's see if that fixes it. And I'll go back to the browser. Alright, so it must be something else. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to delete this class from the main here so it could get rid of the stylizing right there. I'll keep the main tag but delete that class name. I'll save it. Let me check online here. Perfect, that's what I want, just so we could see it easier. So you could see here that the circle is moving. If you take a look here, you could see the light, which is at the top part of the circle. And at the bottom, you can see it's like more of a shadowy effect. So it gives it this 3D effect with the light at the top and then shadow at the bottom. And you can see it slightly moving and morphing that sphere. So right over here as well, we got this textures.com. So right over here, we got this site called textures.com. So if you just Google textures.com, you should get to this site as well. Or if you just type in the URL textures.com/library. You can also find more textures here, like marble, ground, fabric, floor. So you can find a lot of different textures you want to put on your objects. But another thing we want to do is we want to grab some sort of assets to create this 3D phone right here, and we can move it around and, animate it if we want to. Right over here, I'm going to the site called Sketchfab. So Sketchfab is going to help with grabbing any 3D objects, or, if you are into AR as well, then you could always grab any assets you want. So it's great because you can actually get some free assets. Not all of them are free, but we're going to deal with just the free assets that we could get, which is one of the phones that I want us to download. And what I'm going to do is I need to find this file that ends in gltf. Okay, so let me just put this. So right here in my README file, I'm just going to add these notes right here. So if you want to apply textures, you just go to that URL right there to get those textures. And then here for for our free 3D assets, we go to Sketch Fab. So we need to find this file that's called GLTF because it's good for performance and it won't slow down your site. So you need to also convert this into a GLTF 2.0. And to do this, we have to also download the GLTF pipeline. So in order to do the pipeline, here, let me just copy this over here. So this is the GLTF pipeline, and this is going to help convert these 3D assets into reusable assets that we could use in our Next.js project. So what I could do is I could just grab this command and install GLTF. And you can see here it's global. So once you do it once, it should be on your computer already, but I'll just do it again so you could see. If I just go to my terminal, I'm just going to paste the command right here, enter. Now that this is finally done, we can actually go to look for our GLTF file. So let's go look on the site. So right here, we're just going to look for iPhone, enter. And you can see there's some you could purchase if you want, but we just want the free stuff. So I could just go to, let me check here, all categories. Let me see here, filter, downloadable, staff picks, relevance, most viewed, all time, any, models, collections. Let's just put iPhone free. So right here, if I just go to the top search bar and I just search for iPhone free, there should be some free, 3D phones that you could download. So what I'll do here, let's see, iPhone 7. I'll just download this Apple phone right here. If I click on it, okay, I'm going to click on this download little icon. So it's really hard to see, but there's a little icon at the top right of the image. Download 3D model. Click it. Let me just see if it actually downloaded here. Okay, nothing has downloaded for some reason. Okay, I'll just find this other one. iPhone 12 Pro. Click. Okay, so just you have to set up an account here. So I'm just going to sign in. Alright, perfect. So now that I got my account signed in, you can see that it will lead you to a page like this. And you can see there's a bunch of different things that you could download, but we need the GLTF format. So you must download the GLTF file. So I'll click on download. Now that I have it downloaded, I'm just going to, I'll just put it on my desktop so you could see. I have a zip folder. So now that I have it downloaded, you can see I got this zip folder. I'm going to open it up. And inside the zip folder, you'll have a scene, gltf.bin, .txt, and textures if we will actually need this later. So we got the textures that will help with the actual look and feel of the phone, which is going to be really important, or else it'll just look like a box or cube. And then we got our scene.gltf, which will help with creating this 3D object. So before we could actually do anything, we actually have to convert this file. So what I'll do is I will take all this stuff out of the zip folder. I'll just label it iPhone 12, so new folder. I'll just do this on my desktop for now. iPhone 12. I will then drag it over. into the folder. And what I'll do is I have to open up another Visual Studio Code here, File, New Window. And I'm just going to drag over this folder with the iPhone 12 only in a new window in Visual Studio. So you can see here we got our scene.gltf, and this is what we want. We want to open up a new terminal. And then after this, we want to run this command. So I'll type it out, gltf dash pipeline dash I, and we are going to specify the file. We're going to specify the file we want, which is scene.gltf, and we want to convert it now, and I'll just call it something else, so iPhone.gltf. So it's going to do some sort of conversion with this file so then it works properly on our application, and I'll put -d at the end, and then I will hit enter. So it looks like what I'll have to do is, since it doesn't work in this terminal, I might have to use another command. Let me just see here. See, does git bash work? Alright, perfect, so it works. So if I use the git bash right here, download, or if I click this arrow, click on git bash, and I run that gltf pipeline command, it will then convert the scene.gltf to iphone.gltf. Now that we have our iphone.gltf here, we also need to run one more command here, and we are going to run this command. It's going to be npx gltf jsx. So this will actually convert this gltf into a JavaScript format file that can be properly used in Next.js, and it's just going to transform it. So we're going to enter, and it says okay to proceed. I'll say Y, enter. And because we are using gltf, we are going to have to use JSX because this is what the iPhone is using. It's using JSX. If we don't use JSX, it won't work properly. Now you can see on the left side we have our iPhone.jsx. And you can see actually it already created the function for us. So we don't even need to set it up ourselves. It created the mesh as to how the geometry and material would be, and we don't have to deal with it anymore. So all we have to do really is just take this iPhone.jsx and put it in our folder. So here inside our next project, we're going to go to components, and then here in iPhone, since there's nothing here, we just drag over the iPhone.jsx file. Once we dragged over our iPhone.jsx in our components, let's go back to our code here. Let's go back to our actual application, our code here, and we're going to double check, make sure it's here. Perfect. So you can see here it's using gltf, and it's going to grab the material. So we need to actually move over the gltf file as well and fix this pathway. So back in our folder, here in our Next.js project, we're going to go back to the root of our project, and we're going to go into public, and then into our images folder. And inside here where our texture was placed, we're also going to drag over what we have from here. We're going to drag over the gltf file, so iphone.gltf. I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to paste a new copy here. And now that we have our iphone.gltf here, we have to reference it here in our code as well. So I'll have to navigate to images, and then I'll have to go to iPhone .gltf. because right here in our public images, iPhone.gltf is right here. We have to make sure we spell it exactly correct. And I'm going to save it. And everything else looks like it is correct. And now what I can do is I could go back to my pages, index.js here, and we are going to import this iPhone into our index.js. So I'm just going to say import iPhone. So right over here in our iPhone.jsx, we also have to copy this pathway of images and then iPhone.gltf right here at the bottom as well. Make sure it's copied into there and it's fixed. Perfect. And what we're going to have to do is import this here on our page. Let me just double check here. So we have to import our iPhone. So what we'll do here on our home page is we will import, I'll call it iPhone from @/components/ iPhone / the iPhone file. That's all for that one. And what I'll do here now is I could do the exact same thing. I copy this canvas tag, I paste it underneath. Instead of animated sphere, I call it iPhone because that's what we imported at the top right here, iPhone. I could save it. And now let's test it out and let's see what we have on our screen. I need to run this npm run dev. And then I could go to localhost 3001 again. I'm going to localhost 3001 now to check to see if the file works. So it looks like element type invalid, expected a string, built for components, class function for, and likely forgot to export your component. Okay. Click render, check render method home. Alright, so let's take a look at our code here. Probably forgot to export something. So here in our phone.jsx, I have to put export default. Have to add the default right there so that can work. And then save it. And it looks like everything else should be good. I'm going to save it. I'll restart, or I'll just refresh the page and let's see what happens. Okay, so it looks like, okay, so we do have our phone, but it looks like the phone is way too big. So I'm just trying to move it around like this. So the phone is definitely there. It's just way too big. So let's see if we could fix this. What I'll do actually is I will go to, let's see here. I have to change this. So I'm going to go here in iPhone.jsx. I'll add a scale equal to 10. Okay, scale equal to 10. Okay, so still the image is too big. Let's see if I change it scale to 1. Save it. Refresh. Okay, it's still way too big. Let's see if I do 0.5. Save it. Okay, so it is getting smaller. What I'll do is I'll go to the styles and I'll go to home.modules and I'll just say, I'll make another class canvas iPhone and I'll put the height to 1000. Background color, I'll make it beige. Okay, I'll just change it to those colors. And then I have to go back to index.js and I need to change this to canvas-iPhone. Yeah, canvas-iPhone. Save. Canvas-iPhone. Save. Okay. Canvas_iPhone. Okay, we're just going to do underscore, canvas_iPhone. and canvas underscore iPhone. So let's do that. iPhone is not defined. Okay, so I think it's just because I have to restart my server. I'm going to end this server and I'm going to run it again because I think it just can't update whenever we update the styles and stuff. And I'll just refresh. So it says iPhone is not defined. So, okay, line 37 to 41. Let's take a look here. 37. Save it. Save it. There we go, we just forgot to save. So our iPhone is there, but let me just try to, I'll change it to black background so it stands out more. Or maybe just, I'll change this to a slightly darker background just so it stands out a little bit more. Maybe like an orangish color or brownish color. That should be good enough. And what I'll do here is I'll go back to my iPhone.jsx. I'll scale it to 0.2, save it, then I'll refresh the page. Okay, perfect. So it's slowly getting there. It's kind of just the height is causing issues right now. So it's really just the height of the container that we really need to worry about. 2000. So it looks like it's something to do with so it looks like it's more of a stylizing issue with having to fix this CSS and everything. But you can see that it is slowly starting to work, and we got our iPhone here. We just need to really fix whatever size we want to set the phone to. And you can see that this iPhone here, this little blob, and this square that we've set up with our pattern or design on it works already. So it means we are good to go.